Hi there. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melco's application team, and I'm doing our design shop talk today to see what questions you might have, try to get some of them answered. I had some that were sent in ahead of time. I'm going to start with those. While we're live, if you have questions, type them in the chats, and I will try to get to them. I have a separate monitor set up over here so I can keep track of the chat as it comes in, so feel free to type in. All right, let me make sure both. There is YouTube, excellent, and Facebook is up. All right, cool. So I just need to make sure they're both working. Looks like they are. All right, so I'm gonna, hey there. All right, so I can't make the auto sequence work as it should. So many trims in it. It's happened. I guess I'm doing something wrong. Can you please help? So I did play, I know you asked me not to show your design. I did play with your design and get the same result. I believe it has something to do with the fact that they're walks and not columns, because it works if I have it all as columns but not as walk stitches. So I did talk to a few folks up at Melco, and the only suggestion we had was to send it over to engineering. So if you send that file over to applications at melco.com saying it needs to get to engineering, we can get to it. So yeah, because I could not get the trims to go away. Generally on the auto trim or the auto sequencing, there is a let me go pull it up and show you. Let me draw a few things. I just need to draw a few things. So when you go here, there is this travel threshold. Typically if you make this number larger, it will do so on the auto right here, if you make that larger, it will get rid of the trims, but that wasn't working on the what's it called, on the walks. So anyway, I don't have an answer for you on that one. Hi, yes, nice to see you again too. All right. So let's see. Do I have any alternatives to the bean stitch? Yes. So bean stitches, let's start with that. Let's look at a bean stitch. So if I draw a walk normal, right, and then I change it over to a bean, for those who are not familiar with it, it looks the same on the screen, right? But if I look at it, there's a thickness here of 3. What it actually means is as it draws it, so it's going to put forward, back, forward. So it lays 3 pieces of thread down on each one of these, which makes it a nice solid line that's a little bolder. But as the question asks, hey, it's very visible that it's kind of almost like a dotted line because all those needle penetrations are on top of each other, right? So how can we make this look still like a solid line without those clear points? Well, there's a few different ways we can do it. So one is to do a decorative, and I made one. I'm going to go ahead and just put it like that. This is one I like a lot for that. So I made this one. I will show you how to do that in a sec. The other ones that come with the software right here are also, I use these a lot. So I'll use the chain stitch thin and come over here and make, nope, not that one, the height. So I will make the height of it narrower, and I like that. It still makes it look like a nice smooth, thicker line without all those really delineated needle penetrations. It is wider than a bean though. So the other option is to use a decorative stitch similar to the one that I drew here. I call it chain bean, right? And that one, again, it staggers the stitches. So what this does is it's forward, back, and forward, but they're staggered. So you don't get that hard needle penetration. So how I created that was this right here. And I'll go redraw it again for you guys so you can see how I drew it. But this thing right here, all right, so this is a manual stitch that when you're doing decoratives, they all have to start and end on the same horizontal line. All right, so if I come over here and say I'm going to do a manual stitch, and I just went up, it can be lower if you want. I just went a little bit higher and then down and then back about where I wanted it to kind of start the sequence again. So something like that. I got rid of all the tie-ins because we don't need that for what we're doing here. It's a manual stitch. And I'm using that to come over and then say save custom shape. And my favorite way to do this, particularly if you're not sure if it's going to work how you want, is to call it, I call it test, and I just keep overwriting it, tell it to be a decorative. Yes, I want to replace it. So now I can go into my walk, tell it to be a decorative of the one called test, and I can draw it and see if I like how that looks. If I do, great. If I don't, I can adjust it and go again, right? So I like that one a lot as well. It's a little bit, it's about the same look as a bean stitch to me, but without the solid needle penetrations going back on top of each other. Can I make a stitch that looks hand embroidery crewel stitch? So I don't actually know what a crewel stitch is. C-R-U-E-L stitch. I'm Googling crewel stitch. What is a crewel stitch? All right, that did not do it for me. Let's see. I'm just Googling it. What is a crewel whip stitch? Does this tell me what they are? Chain straight. No. This. I don't know what that stitch is. If you have a link for me, I can go look at it. Likely I'm calling it something else. None of the, oh, I don't want to do that. Go away. Yeah, I don't know. Sherry, if you can shoot me a link or something of what that actually is, I can look it up and help, but I don't know. Sorry. Is there, all right, so let me back up. Make sure I answered this question. Yeah, okay, so I did that. I don't know the answer to that one other than send it over. Oh, Kyle asks, for these, would this let me do something 5 to 10 wide? Yes, absolutely. So any of these would work for those narrow things. A bean stitch, that chain stitch, a custom kind of jagged chain, which is there. There are actually multiple chain stitches out here in the software for you. So like that's the one I made there, but up under chain, you've got chain medium, chain thick, and chain thin. So those are all programmed in for you, and those look really nice for things that you want thicker than a bean but not as thick as a satin stitch. Those work really well. Someone asks, are there special settings for thin threads? Yeah, most of the manufacturers actually have recommendations for the threads as part of it. So like on this thread, Madeira 60 weight thread. Let's see, trying to find. Let's see if I can find it real quick, because most of them on there, the actual spools of the thread and the manufacturers will actually have recommendations for density settings and all of that. And of course, oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so I just went to Mitered's site and they have suggestions on digitizing what the density is and the needle size for, that's a 40 weight, which is standard. So for polyneon, they suggest a 3.5 average. I usually do around 3.3 to 3.5 for a 60 weight thread. And then on the 75 weight thread, they're still suggesting about a 3.5. I usually do a 3 to a 3.3. That's just me. But yeah, most of the manufacturers, depending on which one you have, will have different suggestions on what is recommended for densities. So, but yeah, those are those suggestions. 4.0. I like 3.8, so that's just, again, that's a me thing. All right, so Sherry, let me know when you see when you find what that stitch is, and I'll come back to you to that question. All right, so back to the ones that were sent in. All right, I want to take a word in athletic block and do an applique on a curve. Okay, so this one, I guess I either did not understand the question or it just duplicated just fine for me, so I don't know. Oh, cool embroidery. Thank you, Malco. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that one. Sorry, Malco just gave me a picture. What is that? It's like the thread is swirled around the needle and then put in. All right, now that I know what it is, Sherry, I'm gonna have to come back to you on that one after thinking about it. And thank you, Milko, for giving me that link. All right, so I'm sure you can do that with a decorative, but I'll be honest, it's gonna take me a hot minute to think about how to do that, which is good because I like challenges, so, you know. All right, so athletic block. So I went and set text as typed out text, made it on an arch, made it relatively large because Appliqué tends to be for larger things. I came over here and changed it to Appliqué. And then the other thing I went to do is I went under here, under Appliqué settings, and this will let me actually turn on an additional color change. So I have multiple color changes in there. I can then, of course, go and adjust these settings. Like 80% is not good for me. I don't cut that close. That just doesn't work for me. So I'm more of a 60-40 type person. And that's more my speed. And I actually think it's the other way, 40. There we go. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, so, I mean, I might be missing something, but that seemed to work fairly simple. So I set it to arc, typed in the text, change up here to Appliqué, came over to this drop down where it has Appliqué, which lets me adjust all these Appliqué settings. Once I create that, you'll notice it's only got one placement stitch for the letter, and then it does a zigzag and then the satin stitch. So if you want an additional placement, after you've got everything set, you can come in here and say operations convert to wireframe. And now for each letter, I can take that placement stitch, copy, oops, delete. Operations, convert to wireframe, there we go. So it converted each letter, and now I gotta come in here and convert them all just to straight embroidery. All right, so I'm gonna, operations, convert to wireframe, convert to wireframe. All right, so now these are all just straight. So I can copy that one, paste it, and give it another color. So now I've got placement, tack down, zigzag, satin, right? So you can do that for each of these placement stitches if you want to have them to be separate. So Control C, Control V, give it another color. Control C, Control V, give it another color. Control C, Control V, give it another color. And then this one I would go change just because I don't like it. But that's, again, a me thing. I don't like it, but it's too dense in there. I would just go modify that letter. So anyway, so that creates it as an applique for you on a curve from that font. Okay. All right, so what else do we have? Yeah, so I exploded all that, so it's not going to change, but the curve itself, I can modify all I want before then. So if I go back, and let me just close this so it's back to my original file, I mean, I can come in here and change this curve to be bigger or smaller. You know, and it's going to move the text around accordingly. If I don't like the kerning, I can always move it. So as it's set up here, it's pretty straightforward to modify and move around. If you want things off this curve, so for some reason you want to lower it, you got to hold the control key to get it to come down, right? So not that I want to do that, but let's say I wanted this lower, and then I want to rotate it, I can, you know, do weird things if I'm so inclined to, right? So you can move it off that baseline by holding the control key down. That works for any font, whether it's on a curve or a straight point. So now it looks silly, but it's just another tool for your toolbox of modifying fonts, right? Changing each letter. So select the letter, hold the control key down and then drag it, and it lets you move it off that baseline. Then now if I let go of the control, now it'll keep that same distance, but let me move it along the baseline, like around the curve. Okay. All right, what other questions do we have? How would you create a font like this, but in different colors? So staring at this, I could not discern what the shape of this decorative was. Okay. All right. Sorry, the question was typed in back on this. So operations, convert to wireframe, operations, convert to wireframe. Okay, so I can add a point, hold a control, and then drag it. And then, so I would just basically delete this all and modify each letter how I want it, right? So you could do that. So I can change this to be whatever I want and just curve it. Let me undo all what I just did, because I think I just understand what you were saying and I didn't try that beforehand. So let me undo. Okay, I'm just going to close this and reopen it, because then it will be back in text. All right, so operations, nope, properties, there we go. Envelope, and then they have some presets. Let's do that one. Double bridge. So is that what you want, Kyle? Let me know. But that makes the top curved and the bottom curved. And then if you want, it's still got those, I can still modify this by going into the properties, changing this to Appliqué, and now I can get to the Appliqué settings. If I want to add additional, so all you would want to do is go into the properties and then under lettering, change it to envelope, and then select one of the presets. They work really great. So that's all set there. All right, so then again, if you want to add the extra tack down, you would just go to operations, convert to wireframe, and do that for each of these letters. And now I would take this, copy paste, and now I can have a placement and a tack down. Yeah, you don't have to. It curves it really nicely just using that double arch. Okay. All right. So hopefully that helps. Oh, how would I create this? That's what I was talking about. All right. So here it was too blurry, and I zoom in and I can't quite decide what shape that is. So I'm just going to show you a few different ways and options, and hopefully that'll get some creativity going for you. So I've got, where's there? All right. So I drew a few things. All right. So I just drew an A, right? So to do this, I just did a, all right, let me copy that, paste, move it over here, and I'm going to make it just a regular walk stitch. So I started with this. I drew a letter, right? And I did it as a walk stitch and got it in the shape I wanted. Now from here, it's basically decoratives, right? So I've got a decorative. I can come over here and tell it to be those chain stitches, right? So the thin, the medium, or the thick one, right? So you've got some options. I started with the thin one, and then I copied that. Let's make it one color. So copy paste, and then I drug it around. Let's say like that, and give it a different color, right? So that's one option. You can use just the decoratives that are built in, and that will give you that kind of look. And then I was staring at it, go at your picture, and I was like, well, maybe that's a V. So there's this neat, under decoratives, these are all the decoratives that were that come with the software. So you can see those are the chain stitches that I've been using. That's the one that I created. And then I was staring at these and going, hey, this grass one might be convenient, because if I turn it the opposite way, because right now this grass one is set up that if I were just to use a decorative and say grass, where's grass? Right there, and I draw a line, it goes the wrong way, right? So it goes from the top along here. What I want it to do is stack over here. All right, so to do that, I took one element, drug it over here, rotated it 90, zoomed in on it, and I just want to go down the middle, so I'm just putting a guideline. Here's the start point, so I'm going to just add a different point and drag it down here. And then let's move that one up. So that's the start point. This one's the end. So I want it to end somewhere in the middle. And then I didn't like how that was arranging, so now I just move these around so that one's more towards the middle. There we go. So all I'm doing is playing with the one that came with the software, right? I want these all up a little higher. Okay, so my start point and stop point are on the same line. So now I can take this guy, and I probably want that a little lower. I don't know, let's try it. Right click, save custom shape. And then I'm gonna save it as a decorative test, because that's what I like to do. Overwrite this file until I'm happy with it. And now I can try it. And so let's see if I take this one and change it to test, which I just created. All right, so that's cute, a little bit big, so let's change the size. I could either redraw it to be smaller, which is actually what I did, or I can play with these settings. And yeah, so I decided that one just looks too big, so I want to modify it. So I created that one earlier, right? So it's smaller. Again, it's got the start and stop in the middle. I spread those things out a little more. And I'm going to save custom shape, decorative, test 2. And let's try that one. Test 2. See, that's better, right? So it's just a different look for the exact same thing, right? So once I'm happy with it, then that's where I went over and said save custom shape, and I gave it a name that I wanted already, which is already up here. It's like V. Yeah, wide V is what I saved it as. So my naming usually only makes sense to me, so sorry. But yeah, you can call it whatever you want. But that's another way to create a kind of a thicker type chain. So maybe that's the pattern. I don't know from that picture you sent, but you can see you can do this with any decorative, any shape. So all you got to do is kind of be creative about it and think about, you know, what you want to draw and how you want it to repeat. The things to consider is those decoratives are going to repeat. So if it starts here and it ends here, if you're just planning it, you can copy and move this and look at it and say, is that what I want? No, I want it to be a little bit higher, a little further away, or yes, I want it to be closer. So you can kind of work with just your decorative and go, all right, well, if that's where it is, now I know on my actual element, oh, well, that happens to be where I already put it. So I can move that ending point to be about where I want the next one to start. So you can work with just this one, and rather than continuing to save it off and play with it, you can try moving it around and going, yeah, I like it, or no, I don't. I need that gap to be closed. All right, so what would I do? What would I move around to do that? So maybe that, right? So maybe you want that, right? So you can, and then now I can say, all right, copy this again and look at it and see if it now makes sense. All right, well, maybe I don't like this. So it's subjective. What looks good to you? All right, so you can do that with any shape you want, right? You can draw whatever you want and then turn it into a decorative and try it. Okay, hopefully that helps. I'm digitizing a pendant, a long triangle with a smaller triangle inside on the edge, sharing one border. Keisha hide, mitered edge, and short stitches for satin stitch along. Okay, let's see if I can follow that. So a triangle. So let's draw a triangle. Okay, so I drew a triangle with a smaller triangle on side on the edge sharing one border. So copy paste, scale down. So like that, or somewhere up here, or does it matter? And you probably want that to be the same width. So if that's 20, let's make that 20. All right, so let's see how we'd fix this, because one, I wouldn't want this sitting here. So I would split this here, split that one there, delete the extra line. I would move this up under there, make it go under that one. Okay, so I've got that. Right now it has mitered edges, and that is just a matter of settings. So if I go into the properties and then go to the corners right here, these are all set up, right? So it's mitering each one of those. If you don't want that, you can turn it off and force it to cap it. I like the mitered edges personally, but let me reread what you wrote. Can you show how to use mitered edges and short stitches? Okay, you really don't need short stitches here, right? Because short stitches are, if I were to turn off all of those corners, so let's turn that off. Short stitches matter in here, right? Because what ends up happening is you end up with a gazillion stitches coming into the small area as it's fanning around. And that's where this will end up looking like a mushroom, because there's just too many stitches in a small area, right? So you turning on those that corner feature really helps reduce that bulk. So I usually just let it pick which one it wants, and I almost always like it, so I just leave it alone. Now the other thing with this is you've got blue and blue all touching. I'm gonna make it that color. All right, so now it's all one color. If I tell it to update the trims, you'll notice there's a trim in there. We don't need that because it's all touching, right? So I can say this one starts there, ends there. So I can just move this one to start and end where the last one was. If I update my auto trims, that trim's gone, and now it will sew it continuously. Okay, Beth, does that help at all? Hopefully it does. All right, let's see, what other questions while I wait to see if that helped. All right, so we did that one. When I create a patch in DesignShop, my thread always starts to shred when stitching a border in the top right side of the patch. Top right. So that's on the side that the presser foot is hanging down on the machine. I would look and see, yeah. Let's see, I'm just thinking. The presser foot, I would check and make sure it's not bent and hitting stuff, because that top right, the presser foot's up in that quarter. So if it's back there, maybe it's hanging off and flexing somehow into it. So maybe that. But I mean, the design of the patch shouldn't matter, right? So if I come over to a new file and I draw a patch, so I mean, it really doesn't matter the shape, right? So if I got let's make a standard 3-inch patch. Let's just be standard. All right, so I got a 3-inch circle. I'm going to copy paste, give it another color, make that a bean stitch because I like that. That's my placement. That's my tack down of the fabric. I grab my scissors or my modified. This is my favorite tool ever. Put it over my forehead. Maybe you can see it. So I broke off the tip on a seam ripper. So I broke that off intentionally. So now I can cut along my patch by putting the ball on the fabric and then, or on the bottom fabric or the plastic, whatever I've hooped. And then I cut along my circle with this. That's a razor in there, so it trims really well. All right, so I've got my placement, my tack down, hold my shift key down and my satin stitch, change that to a tackle and make it something bigger in another color. So there's my tack down. Now I would do whatever design I have. So design would go now, and I would sew whatever design I have on my thing, and then I would copy this, paste it after that, turn it into a satin stitch, something wider, whatever makes you happy, and there's a patch, right? And then if I just want to show it, making it look like a patch, I can select that one of those circles, hold my shift key down, and click on vector, and now it will look like a patch on my screen, right? That's just a vector. That's all that is. So I just put a vector in place. All right, so placement, tack down, zigzag, design, satin stitch, poof. As far as patches go, you can do it on Badge Master. You can do it, just sew it and cut it out with a laser, or if you use all synthetic materials, you can cut along here kind of close and then grab a burner of sorts and burn the edges, like a hot knife to cut it out. I have a slight tremor, and hot knifing it doesn't work for me. So I just cut it and I sew it directly into like a 6mm plastic. You can find it at Home Depot. And sew my whole patch, pop it out of the plastic, use a heat gun to melt the little pokies from the plastic away, and I'm done. So that's how I do them. It works really well. But your question, thread shredding on this corner, it shouldn't, right? So I would make sure your needle is oriented the correct way, so you're not, and there's nothing bent on the actual machine with your presser foot, because that's really the only thing I could think is, or flagging. So maybe your design is flagging. If your presser foot's too high and it's at that point, it's off off your other material, it might be bouncing more, which would cause shredding. So that corner, I'm just trying to think the logistics. Your presser foot would be hanging out back here as it's sewing, right? So it may not be getting a good handle on this to hold it still. So maybe it's a matter of your presser foot being too high. So that's kind of my brainstorm for you. Question typed in, do you have any tips on Richardson's 112? I think we have some videos on that that they posted. I think Josh did them. I don't remember. Anyway, you can steam the seam. That's a really good little tip there. They put, the Richardsons have this plastic bias stuff under the bias tape and the buckram. So it's really thick through that seam. So steaming can help. I know a lot of people do that, but really not starting designs directly on that plastic in the middle. So yes, we want to sew center out, top, bottom to top, but we can run into it, right? So we can do a running stitch somewhere else so that all those slow stitches are done off of that area, and then it picks up speed, and by the time we're at full speed and we hit that middle, 4 layers of buckram, the bias tape, and a piece of plastic, by the time we get into that, we're running at full speed. So we did get you a link in the comments to a video that was done on Richardson's, so I would check that out if you haven't seen it. But those are kind of the most common things that really do help. Okay. Is there a way to create a group of the favorite fonts you use a lot? I think you broke me, because I'm now trying to think about that. I don't want to show it live if I break something. I think there's a way, but I would need to test it. And I don't want to show you how to modify code unless I know it's actually going to work, because then someone will do it and break something if I break it here. Gut reaction is that it's probably hard to do that. I think there is a way in the HTML, it's not HTML, but anyway, there's some code where you can create a new thing here, but I don't know what the effect would be on everything. So that's something I'd have to test before I even attempt to show you that. So right now I'd say no. Sorry, Iris. That's a interesting one. I know I just have them all memorized, so I just start typing them up here. So the ones I like a lot, like military block, I use that one a ton. So I'll type it, block 2, that's another one. So I just start typing and selecting. That's how I do them rather than surfing through them. Dancing, that's another one I like. So I just have them all memorized. Yeah. So Chipmunk says, yeah, definitely not sure why it's just one spot on the patches. Like I said, this is back to the question of why is a thread shredding in this corner. And the only thing that makes any sense is it has to do with the presser foot, because the presser foot hangs off on that side of the machine. So if it's bent, or if it's, more, that's hanging off of the actual patch material, where over here it's going to be on it, because it's going to be, over on this side. So down here it's going to be above it. This is the only area where it kind of hangs off. So maybe it has to do with the presser foot allowing flagging. So that's where I would look at and see if that's what's going on. Because if it's flagging, you just lower the presser foot and be done with it, right? Or if the presser foot is bent off to the side, then it's going to exacerbate the fact that it's off that material. So maybe it just needs to be bent back so it'll grab part of the material here, the threading. Yeah, so that's, like I said, I'm just kind of brainstorming here, but that would be my only thought, because this corner, that presser foot hangs that way. So, it shouldn't do that, Kyle. So all the settings, you know, however you close it out is how it should stay. So if you come in here and, you know, turn the grid off, then it should stay off the next time you open it. So I just to get to that, I right click, turn that off, and then I guess you could click save as default right there, and that should, next time you open it, that should be the default. So the question was, how do I get the grid to be off every time I start DesignShop? So that's what I would say. Okay. Yeah, so those were the questions typed in. Anyone else have anything else you want to talk about? I know we were off for a few weeks. I had lots of travel. I went to Boston and I rode at the head of the Charles in Boston. Came home for like 2.5 days, and then hit another plane to go to Philly and rode up in Philly with my daughter. Ton of fun. And then her crew rode the next day. So, yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm going to hang out for a sec in case someone is frantically typing. Next week, I'm not going anywhere. So, yep, next week I'm here. And the week after that is my last flight out of town. I am flying to, where am I going? Yeah, on the 13th, I'm flying to Chicago this time to do yet another race. This is race season, except this one's going to be a high rocks, so I'm not actually rowing this time. I'm going to act like a fool at Navy Pier, so it's going to be great. All right. Well, I'm glad this was helpful today. Yay. If you guys have any questions, don't forget to type them in. So we do have a form up there. It's under, if you go onto into the help area on melco-service.com, you can click on DesignShop Talk episodes, and it'll take you to this thing. And there's a link there. That's the link itself. And it will take you to a form where you can type in any of your questions. Do that, right? So anytime you think of something, type it in. It'll be there for when I go and pull questions. And that way you don't have to remember, to ask while we're live. And if you aren't live, it's cool. The question will be there for you to watch later. All right. So yeah, be sure to submit any questions. If you go to that thing, you can also see any episodes that were done before. I was looking at it. I've been doing these since 2019, so it's been a lot of them. So rather than watching random videos, you can always do a Control F and search for a topic that you want, and try to get them answered there. All right. Have a fantastic weekend. I will see you next Thursday, and let us know what you want to learn about. Fill out your questions so I have something to talk about, and I will see you again. Oh, let's see. Awesome, Kyle. I'm glad that worked. All right. So have a great weekend. I will be back next week. Talk to you then. Bye, everyone.